You know that saying, ignorance is bliss? Well, I was blissfully ignorant until about 3 months ago. My life was, by all accounts, picture perfect. I had a charming husband named Mark, a beautiful suburban home with a white picket fence, the whole cliché. Even our golden retriever, Buddy, seemed straight out of a family sitcom. Life was good. Scratch that. Life was great. That all changed on a rainy Wednesday afternoon. I remember it vividly because I was stuck in traffic, cursing the weather and the radio for playing the same 3 songs on repeat. My phone buzzed with a notification. A message from our credit card company about unusual activity. Unusual activity? Mark was supposed to be at work, and I hadn't bought anything except a regrettable kale smoothie earlier. When I got home, I decided to check our account online. Maybe Mark had finally taken up my hint and bought those theatre tickets I'd been dropping not-so-subtle hints about. As I scrolled through the transactions, one stood out. A hefty charge from a luxury hotel downtown. Interesting choice for a man who hates hotel pillows. I pondered for a moment, sipping my overpriced, underwhelming kale concoction. Could it be a mistake? Maybe he was planning a surprise staycation. But Mark was about as spontaneous as a scheduled root canal. My curiosity piqued. I did what any rational woman would do. I snooped. I accessed his email. He'd given me the password years ago for emergencies, and this felt like one. Buried between work emails and subscription newsletters was a confirmation for a reservation at the said hotel, dated 2 nights ago. Attached was a thank you note from someone named Amber, expressing how much she enjoyed their time together. Well, isn't that just peachy? I took a deep breath, counting to 10 like all those self-help books advise. My mind raced through a carousel of emotions, disbelief, anger, sadness, and then a strange sense of calm. Confronting him directly seemed too pedestrian. No, if Mark wanted to play games, I was going to change the rules. First, I needed information. I channeled my inner Sherlock Holmes, or perhaps more accurately, my inner FBI agent with access to Google and social media. It didn't take long to find Amber. She was young, attractive, and had an Instagram feed filled with inspirational quotes and latte art. Typical. But Amber was just the tip of the iceberg. As I delved deeper, I discovered there were others. Sophie, a yoga instructor with a penchant for beach selfies. Vanessa, a freelance photographer who apparently specialized in duck-face portraits. And Claire, whose main talent seemed to be taking pictures of her meals. Mark had been busy, and not in the way a devoted husband should be. Now, I could have confronted him with this information, maybe thrown a vase for dramatic effect, but where's the fun in that? Instead, I decided to give Mark a taste of his own medicine-served cold, with a twist. I created a fake profile on the dating app he was using, choosing the name Luna, mysterious, alluring, and utterly fictitious. Using a combination of stock photos and a little Photoshop magic, I crafted the image of the perfect woman according to Mark's type. Brunette, blue-eyed, with a smile that suggested both innocence and mischief. It didn't take long for Mark to take the bait. He messaged Luna with the subtlety of a bulldozer, laying on compliments thicker than molasses. I played along, matching his flirtations while internally rolling my eyes. It was almost too easy. Over the next few weeks, our conversations became more intimate. He shared details about his unfulfilling marriage, painting himself as the victim in a story where he was clearly the villain. I resisted the urge to send a sarcastic emoji. Meanwhile, I reached out to the other women he'd been seeing. Posing as a journalist, writing an article on dating app experiences, I managed to get them to open up about their encounters with Mark. Turns out, he wasn't just cheating. He was making promises he had no intention of keeping, stringing them along with talk of future plans and shared dreams. Classic. With all the pieces in place, I set my plan into motion. I invited Marcus Luna to a special getaway weekend at a quaint bed and breakfast just outside the city. He jumped at the chance, eagerly agreeing and even offering to bring champagne. How thoughtful. Simultaneously, I contacted Amber, Sophie, Vanessa, and Claire, informing each that Mark had something important to tell them and that he wanted to meet them at the same location. I may have hinted that he was planning a proposal. Yes, it was a stretch, but given the fantasies he'd been spinning, it wasn't entirely implausible. On the day of the rendezvous, I arrived early, booking a room under Luna's name. I informed the owner, a delightful woman named Margaret, that I was planning a surprise for my fiancé and that several of his friends would be joining us. She was thrilled to be part of the conspiracy, offering to help set up. We arranged the sitting room with balloons, flowers, and a banner that read, "Congratulations." It looked like the scene of a Hallmark moment sweet to the point of inducing cavities. One by one, the women arrived, each dressed to impress and carrying an air of expectation. They were surprised to see one another, but I explained that Mark wanted all the important people in his life to be present for this special occasion. Their skepticism was overshadowed by curiosity. Finally, Mark arrived, looking smug and carrying a bottle of champagne. The look on his face when he saw all of us gathered was priceless, a mix of confusion, panic, and the realization that he'd just stepped into his own personal purgatory. "What's going on?" he stammered, eyes darting between the women and the festive decorations. "Surprise!" I exclaimed, stepping forward. "Isn't this what you wanted, Mark? All of us together to celebrate?" He blinked rapidly, his brain visibly struggling to process the situation. I don't understand." "Oh, allow me to clarify," I said, my tone saccharine sweet. "You've been quite the busy man, haven't you? Juggling all of us like a poorly coordinated circus act." The room fell silent. The other women stared at him, realization dawning. Amber was the first to speak. "Wait, you know him?" she asked me. "Know him?" I laughed. "Honey, I'm married to him." Gasps echoed around the room. Mark looked like a deer caught in headlights, mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. "You told me you were divorced!" Vanessa exclaimed, her face flushing with anger. "And me that you were single and looking to settle down," Claire added, crossing her arms. Sophie just shook her head, eyes narrowed. "Unbelievable." Mark raised his hands defensively. "Now, ladies, this is all a misunderstanding." I couldn't help but chuckle. "Oh, it's quite clear, actually. The only misunderstanding was on your part, thinking you could keep this charade going indefinitely." He turned to me, desperation creeping into his voice. "Linda, please, let's talk about this privately." "Why? So you can spin more lies?" I shrugged nonchalantly. "I think everything that needs to be said can be shared here." Margaret, sensing the tension, quietly slipped out of the room. Smart woman. The next hour was a glorious symphony of righteous fury. Each woman took her turn confronting Mark, detailing the promises he'd made and the lies he'd told. He tried to defend himself, but his excuses were as flimsy as wet tissue paper. Eventually the women left, but not before Amber poured the champagne over his head, a fitting end to his bubble of deceit. As Mark stood there, drenched and defeated, I felt a surge of satisfaction, but I wasn't done yet. "By the way," I said casually, retrieving a folder from my bag, "these are divorce papers. I've already signed them. Consider this your official notice." He looked at me, eyes wide. "You can't be serious." "Oh, but I am." I handed him the folder. "And just so you know, the house is in my name. You'll need to find somewhere else to live." He sputtered. "But where am I supposed to go?" I smiled brightly. "I hear the bed and breakfast here is lovely. Maybe Margaret will give you a discount." With that, I turned on my heel and walked out, feeling lighter than I had in years. But the story doesn't end there. A few days later, I decided to take things a step further. You see, Mark had always been obsessed with his reputation. A pillar of the community, a successful businessman, the whole 9 yards. It would be a shame if word got out about his extracurricular activities. I composed an anonymous email to his company's board of directors, detailing his misconduct and attaching some of the more incriminating evidence I'd gathered. Nothing slanderous, just the truth. It wasn't long before I heard through the grapevine that he'd been asked to resign. Apparently, the company didn't appreciate the negative publicity. Meanwhile, I focused on rebuilding my life. I started painting again, something I'd given up when Mark complained about the mess. I reconnected with old friends, took cooking classes, and even adopted a kitten named Whiskers, who had a habit of knocking over my paint jars but made up for it with his adorable purring. One afternoon, I received a call from an unknown number. Curiosity got the better of me, and I answered. "Hello? Linda, it's Mark." I rolled my eyes. "What do you want?" I wanted to apologize," he began, his voice lacking its usual arrogance. "I've lost everything. My job, my house, you. I messed up." I remained silent, letting him continue. "I'm going to therapy," he said. "I realized I have issues I need to work through." "That's commendable," I replied evenly. "Is there any chance at all that we could try again?" I laughed, a genuine hearty laugh that felt cleansing. "Mark, you must be joking." "People make mistakes," he pleaded. "Yes, they do. But there's a difference between a mistake and a series of calculated choices to deceive and hurt others." He sighed heavily. "I understand. I just wanted to say I'm sorry." "Apology accepted," I said, surprising even myself. "But that doesn't change anything." "Fair enough," he conceded. "I wish you the best." "Take care, Mark." I hung up, feeling an unexpected sense of closure. Weeks turned into months, and life settled into a new, happier normal. One day, while browsing at a local art fair, I met a man named Daniel. He was charming, with a wit as quick as his smile. We chatted about the paintings, laughed over shared anecdotes, and before I knew it, he'd asked me to coffee. As we sat in a cozy cafe, sipping lattes that were infinitely better than any kale smoothie, I felt a spark I hadn't realized I'd been missing. "Tell me about yourself," he said, leaning forward with genuine interest. I smiled. "Well, it's a long story, but let's just say I recently made some significant life changes. Good ones, I hope." "The best," I replied, clinking my cup gently against his. As we talked, I couldn't help but think about how far I'd come. From a betrayed wife to a woman who took control of her destiny, with a few creative twists along the way. Later that evening, I reflected on everything that had happened. Did I regret orchestrating that elaborate revenge? Perhaps a little. But then I remembered the look on Mark's face, the empowerment I felt standing up for myself, and the freedom that followed. Life is unpredictable, but sometimes, amidst the chaos, you find clarity. Oh, and remember, buddy, our golden retriever. He's loving his new home with me and Whiskers. They get along surprisingly well, considering one likes to fetch and the other likes to pretend he's too sophisticated for such antics. As for Mark, last I heard, he moved to a small town upstate to find himself. I wish him well, truly. Everyone deserves a chance at redemption, even if it's without me. And so, here I am, embracing the unexpected, painting my canvases, and perhaps starting a new chapter with a man who just might be worthy of sharing it. Sometimes, life's detours lead you exactly where you're meant to be.